My sister Madison has always been the family's shining star. Valedictorian. Full-ride scholarship to Stanford. MBA before she turned 26. When she launched Madison Tech Solutions 3 years ago, our parents threw a launch party that cost more than most people's weddings. I wasn't invited to that party either. Emma's going through a difficult phase, Mom explained to relatives who asked. We thought it best she focus on finding herself. What they meant was, Emma dropped out of college, works random jobs, and refuses to explain her life choices to anyone. They weren't entirely wrong. I did drop out of USC after my sophomore year. I did work a series of seemingly random positions: barista, bookstore clerk, administrative assistant, at a small consulting firm no one had heard of. I lived in a modest apartment in a neighborhood my parents considered unsafe, drove a 10-year-old Honda Civic, and wore clothes from Target. To my family, I was the cautionary tale, the one who had so much potential and threw it all away. Madison never let me forget it. Still working at that coffee shop? She'd ask at family dinners, her voice dripping with concern that fooled no one. You know, Emma, it's never too late to go back to school. I could talk to some admissions counselors if you want. I'm fine, I'd reply. Are you though? Dad would interject. Because your mother and I worry. You're 28 years old with no degree, no career trajectory, no savings that we can see. No savings that you can see, I'd think. But I never said it out loud. The truth was more complicated than they could imagine. But I'd learned years ago that my family didn't want truth. They wanted the story that fit their narrative. Madison was the success. I was the failure. Explaining reality would only make things worse. So I stayed quiet. I worked my random jobs. And I let them believe whatever they wanted to believe. The text came on a Tuesday afternoon while I was in a budget meeting at my consulting firm. Madison, big news. Brett proposed. Engagement dinner this Saturday at Marchesi. 6 p.m. Family only. Marchesi. Of course. The most exclusive Italian restaurant in the city, where reservations required 3 months' notice and entrees started at $85. I texted back. Congratulations. I'll be there. The response came 30 seconds later. Madison, actually let me call you. I excused myself from the meeting. My CFO nodded understandingly and stepped into my private office. Hey, I answered. Emma. Madison's voice had that careful tone she used when she was about to say something cruel but wanted to sound compassionate. I'm so happy you want to celebrate with us. Really. But I need to be honest about something. Okay. Brett's family is, well, they're very successful. His father owns 3 pharmaceutical companies. His mother sits on multiple boards. They're going to be at this dinner and... She paused. I don't want you to feel uncomfortable. Uncomfortable how? Emma, Marchesi is extremely expensive. I know your budget is tight and I don't want you to feel pressured to order something you can't afford, or to feel out of place when everyone else is. Madison, I interrupted quietly. Are you uninviting me from your engagement dinner? No. God, no. I'm just saying, maybe this particular dinner isn't the right fit. We can celebrate together another time. Somewhere more casual. My treat, obviously. The condescension was so thick I could practically taste it. I can afford Marchesi, I said evenly. She laughed. Not a cruel laugh exactly. More like the laugh you'd give a child who insisted they could drive a car. Emma, I've seen your apartment. I know what you make at that coffee shop. There's no shame in having a budget. I'll be there Saturday at 6, I said. Emma. Congratulations again, Madison. See you Saturday. I hung up before she could respond. My assistant knocked on my door. Ms. Anderson? The Deutsche Bank team is here for the 3 o'clock. I took a breath, smoothed my blazer and smiled. Send them in. I arrived at Marchesi exactly at 6. The restaurant occupied the top floor of the Princeton building, all floor-to-ceiling windows and crystal chandeliers. The kind of place where the wait staff remembered your name and your preferred table. Good evening, Ms. Anderson, the maitre d' greeted me warmly. Wonderful to see you again. You're dining with the Madison party this evening? I am, Marco. Thank you. Right this way. I followed him through the main dining room, aware of the looks I was getting. Not because I looked out of place. I'd worn a simple black dress, pearls, and the Louboutins I kept in my office for client dinners. but because half the people in this restaurant knew exactly who I was. I just hoped none of them said anything before I was ready. The Madison party had reserved the private dining room. Through the glass doors I could see my family already seated. Mom and Dad at one end, Madison and her fiancé Brett in the middle, and Brett's parents across from them. Madison spotted me and her smile faltered for just a second before she recovered. "Emma, you made it." She stood to hug me and I caught her whisper, "Please don't order the expensive stuff. Brett's parents are paying." I pulled back and smiled at the table. "Congratulations, both of you." Brett stood to shake my hand. He was exactly what you'd expect. Tall, handsome in a generic way, expensive suit, firm handshake. "Emma, great to finally meet you. Madison's told me so much about you." "I'll bet she has," I thought. Brett's parents introduced themselves, Richard and Constance, with the kind of polite coolness that came from old money. They assessed me in seconds. Inexpensive dress, they couldn't tell it was Dior. Minimal jewelry, the pearls were real but understated. Cheap car, they'd probably seen me pull up in the Honda. I could practically see their conclusion. Madison's unfortunate sister. How embarrassing. Dinner started pleasantly enough. Madison told the story of Brett's proposal. A private yacht, sunset, photographer hidden to capture the moment. Brett's parents shared stories about their own engagement 30 years ago in the south of France. I ordered the Chilean sea base. Madison visibly winced. "That's $45, she whispered while everyone else was distracted. "I know," I replied calmly. The conversation eventually turned to careers as it always did with my family. "Madison's company is doing phenomenally well," Dad announced proudly. "Just closed a significant funding round. $2.4 million, Madison said, unable to hide her pride. "From a private investor who believes in our vision. We're expanding to 3 new markets this quarter." "That's wonderful, dear," Mom gushed. "And Emma, how's the coffee shop?" The table went quiet. Even the waitstaff seemed to pause. "I actually left the coffee shop," I said. "I'm doing consulting work now." "Consulting?" Richard raised an eyebrow. "What kind of consulting?" "Business strategy, operational efficiency, investment analysis. That sort of thing." Madison actually laughed. "Emma, that's not really consulting. That's more like administrative support, right? Filing, scheduling, making copies." Brett's mother Constance jumped in, her voice syrupy with false kindness. "There's absolutely nothing wrong with administrative work. Every successful person needs good support staff." "I'm not support staff," I said quietly. "Of course not," Madison said in that same patronizing tone. "You're learning the business, working your way up. That's admirable, Emma." "Really?" Brett leaned forward. "Where do you work?" "Maybe I know the firm." "It's a small company," I deflected. "Most people haven't heard of it." "Probably one of those startups in a shared office space," Richard said dismissively. "Those pop up and disappear every week." The appetizers arrived, providing a welcome distraction. But Madison wasn't done. "You know what's funny?" she said, gesturing around the restaurant. "This place is way above your budget, Em. I mean, look at this menu. Entrees are $80–90. Wine list starts at $200 a bottle. How are you even affording to be here?" The table laughed. Not meanly, exactly, but the kind of laugh that came from shared understanding among people who belonged. Her fiancé smirked. "Maybe try McDonald's next time. More your speed, right?" More laughter. I smiled politely, set down my fork, and pulled out my phone. "Emma, we're at dinner," Mom hissed. "Put that away." I ignored her and opened my secure messaging app, the one connected directly to my wealth management team. To David Chen, Senior Portfolio Manager from Anderson. Subject: Urgent, Madison Tech Solutions. Effective immediately, withdraw all capital from Madison Tech Solutions. Full divestment. Notify their board I'm exercising the investor withdrawal clause per section 7.3 of our agreement. Execute by end of business today. I hit send and placed my phone face down on the table. Madison's phone buzzed. She glanced at it and frowned. "That's weird. My CFO just texted." Her phone buzzed again. Then again. "He's calling now." She looked annoyed. "I should take this. Probably just a glitch with our banking portal." "Take it," I said calmly. She stepped away from the table, phone pressed to her ear. Through the glass door, I watched her expression change from annoyed to confused to panicked. She came back pale. There's some kind of error with our investor account. Our CFO says. He says our entire funding round just got withdrawn. Withdrawn? Brett looked confused. What do you mean withdrawn? I don't know. He's saying our investor exercised some clause in the agreement. But that doesn't make any sense. We have a 3-year lock-in period. They can't just. Her phone rang again. Then Brett's phone. Then her phone again. This is insane, Madison said, her voice rising. That's $2.4 million. We have contracts. We have expansion plans. We have employees starting next week. My phone chimed with a confirmation from David. Done. Full withdrawal executed. Their board has been notified. They'll receive formal documentation within the hour. I picked up my wine glass and took a sip. Madison's hands shook as she answered another call. Yes, I understand there's a clause. But who would? She stopped mid-sentence. Her eyes went very wide. She looked directly at me. Can you hold for just 1 second? She lowered the phone. The entire table was staring at her. Emma. Her voice was barely a whisper. What's the name of your consulting firm? I set down my wine glass. Anderson Strategic Ventures. Dead silence. That's not possible, Madison said. Anderson Strategic Ventures is a private equity firm. They manage over $400 million in assets. They have holdings in 70 companies. She stopped, her face going even paler. They're our investor. Our only investor. I didn't say anything. Emma. Dad's voice cut through the silence. What is she talking about? I looked at my father. I'm talking about the fact that I founded Anderson Strategic Ventures 6 years ago. I dropped out of USC because I got accepted into a private mentorship program with 3 former Goldman Sachs partners. I spent 2 years learning venture capital, private equity, and investment strategy. At 24, I launched my own firm with seed money from those same mentors who became my partners. The table stared at me like I was speaking another language. For the past 4 years, I've built a portfolio of 73 companies across 8 industries. We manage $420 million in active capital. I personally oversee 14 investments, including 3 that have gone public. I turned to Madison. One of those investments was your company. Or rather, it was. No, Madison whispered. That's not possible. Our investor is anonymous. There's some trust or fund or Section 12.7 of your operating agreement, I said calmly. All investors have the right to remain anonymous to company leadership unless they choose to disclose. I chose not to disclose. Why? She breathed. Because I wanted to see if you could succeed on your own merit. Without our family's connections. Without Dad's lawyer friends or Mom's social network. I wanted to invest in your actual ability, not your last name. I pulled out a folder I'd brought in my bag. Yes, I'd planned for this possibility and slid it across the table. Your company's valuation, growth metrics, and performance reports for the last 18 months. You did good work, Madison. I was proud of what you built. Was. Brett's mother said sharply. I looked at her. Was. Past tense. Because 20 minutes ago, I instructed my wealth management team to withdraw all capital from Madison Tech Solutions. As of approximately 6:15 this evening, Madison's company lost its entire funding round. $2.4 million gone. Madison's phone was ringing constantly now. Emma, you can't do this. We have contracts. We have. Section 7.3, I said. Investor withdrawal clause. Any investor can withdraw capital with 72 hours notice if they determine the investment no longer aligns with their fund's values or strategic direction. I just determined that insulting your anonymous investor at a public dinner doesn't align with my values. You're destroying my company. Madison shouted. Do you have any idea what this means? We have employees. We have clients. You have 3 days to find alternative funding, I said. That's what the 72-hour notice period is for. I suggest you start making calls. Dad found his voice. Emma, this is insane. You can't expect us to believe you're some kind of financial mogul. You live in a cheap apartment. You drive an old car. I drive a 2015 Honda Civic because it's reliable and doesn't attract attention. I live in a modest apartment because I spend 16 hours a day at my office and only sleep there. I dress simply because I don't need to prove anything to anyone. I stood up. But if you need proof, ask Marco to show you to my regular table. I eat here twice a month. Or check the building directory downstairs. Anderson Strategic Ventures occupies the entire 14th floor of this building. Or Google my name along with Forbes 30 Under 30 from 2 years ago. I picked up my purse. Congratulations on your engagement, Madison. I hope you find new funding. I really do. You're talented enough to deserve it. You're just not talented enough to insult your investors and keep their money. I walked to the door then paused. Oh, and for the record, this meal is being comped. The Princeton Building Management Group owns Marquesi. I'm on their board. So technically, Madison, this dinner is on me. I pulled open the door. Enjoy your evening, everyone. I walked out of Marquesi and took the private elevator down to the parking garage. My real car, the Tesla Model S I kept in the building's executive parking, was waiting. My phone rang before I even started the engine. Madison. I let it go to voicemail. Then Dad called. Voicemail. Then Mom. Voicemail. By the time I pulled into my real apartment building, the penthouse condo in Preston Tower that I'd purchased outright 2 years ago, I had 17 missed calls. I poured myself a scotch and sat by the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. My phone buzzed with a text from David Chin. David, Madison Tech Solutions board is in emergency session. 3 members have already resigned. Their CFO is requesting a meeting with you. How would you like me to respond? I thought about it for a moment then typed. Tell them I'm willing to discuss reinvestment under new terms. But only if Madison personally requests the meeting and acknowledges what happened. David understood. Brutal move tonight, by the way. Respect. I smiled and set down my phone. Bust again. This time a text from an unknown number. This is Brett. Madison is hysterical. Her company is falling apart. Whatever point you were trying to make, you made it. Can we please talk about fixing this? I didn't respond. An hour later, Madison herself texted. Emma, please. I'm sorry. I was awful to you. You're right about everything. Can we please talk? I stared at the message for a long time. Part of me, the part that remembered growing up with her, sharing a room, being close before life and expectations drove us apart, wanted to call her back immediately. Wanted to fix everything. Wanted to be the sister who saved her. But I'd spent 8 years being dismissed, condescended to, and treated like a failure by my own family. 8 years of quiet endurance while I built something they couldn't even imagine. I texted back, we can talk Monday. Call my office and schedule through my assistant. Her response came immediately, your office? Emma, I'm your sister. Exactly, I wrote back. Which is why I invested in you in the first place. But business is business. If you want to discuss reinvestment terms, we do it professionally. Monday at my office. 10 a.m. 3 dots appeared, then disappeared, then appeared again. Finally, I'll be there. Madison arrived at Anderson Strategic Ventures at 9:47 a.m. on Monday, 13 minutes early. My assistant showed her to our main conference room, the one with the glass walls and the view of the entire city. I made her wait until exactly 10 o'clock. When I walked in, she stood immediately. She looked like she hadn't slept. Her usual polished appearance was disheveled, her eyes red. Emma, I held up a hand. Let's keep this professional. Please sit. She sat. I placed a folder on the table between us. Your company's current financial status. As of this morning, you have approximately 11 days of operating capital remaining. 2 of your 5 board members have resigned. 3 employees have already accepted positions elsewhere. Your biggest client is requesting reassurance about your stability. I know, she whispered. Emma, please. I'm willing to discuss reinvestment, I said. But under new terms. Hope flashed across her face. Anything. What do you need? I slid a document across the table. First, acknowledgement. I need you to formally acknowledge to your board that I am your investor. No more anonymity. Second, I want a board seat. I've been a passive investor. That changes now. Third, you attend family therapy with me. Professional, structured sessions. Because this isn't just about business, Madison. This is about 8 years of you treating me like I was worthless. He stared at the document. Family therapy? Non-negotiable. We fix our relationship or I walk away permanently. You find other funding which in 11 days is going to be nearly impossible, or your company folds. That's blackmail. No, I said quietly. That's me setting boundaries. For years, I let you and Mom and Dad treat me however you wanted because explaining the truth felt like bragging. But I'm done with that. You want my money? You respect me. Publicly and privately. Madison's hands shook as she picked up the pen. What about the amount? Are you reinvesting the full $2.4 million? $3 million, I said. Your expansion plans were actually solid. You just needed better execution. I'm giving you more capital than before but with oversight. I'm bringing in my operations team to help you scale properly. She looked up at me, tears in her eyes. Why are you doing this? Because despite everything you're still my sister. And because your company actually has potential. I don't make bad investments, Madison. I just don't make investments in people who disrespect me. I softened slightly. You built something real. You just forgot who helped you along the way. She signed the document with shaking hands. Thank you, she whispered. Don't thank me. Prove me right. Build the company you claimed you could build. And maybe, eventually we can rebuild what we used to have. She nodded, wiping her eyes. As she stood to leave, she paused at the door. Emma, for what it's worth, I really am sorry. About everything. Not just Saturday night. About every dismissive comment, every time I made you feel small, every time I let Mom and Dad talk about you like you were a failure. I'm sorry. I nodded. I know. We'll work on it. After she left, I sat in the conference room for a long time looking out at the city. My phone buzzed. A text from Mom. Your father and I would like to take you to dinner. To talk. Please. I thought about it then replied. Sunday, 6 p.m. Marquesi. I'll make the reservation. Because some conversations needed to happen in the place where everything changed. 3 days later, I sat across from my parents in the same private dining room. They looked uncomfortable, unsure. An expression I'd never seen on either of their faces before. We owe you an apology, Dad started. Several apologies, Mom corrected. I listened as they stumbled through explanations, justifications, and eventually genuine contrition. They'd spent the last 72 hours learning everything about my company, my success, my carefully constructed life that they'd dismissed as failure. Why didn't you tell us? Mom asked finally. Would you have believed me? I asked quietly. Or would you have assumed I was delusional? Making up stories to feel better about dropping out of college. The silence was my answer. I built this without you because I needed to know I could, I said. Every time you called me a failure, every time you compared me to Madison, every time you acted ashamed of me, I used it as fuel. To prove that your approval didn't define my worth. And you did, Dad said quietly. You proved it beyond any doubt. So what happens now? Mom asked. I thought about it. Now we set new boundaries. You don't get to dismiss my choices just because you don't understand them. You don't get to compare me to Madison or anyone else. And you definitely don't get to treat me like an embarrassment. And if we agree? Dad asked. Then we rebuild. Fully. With respect on both sides. I smiled slightly. And maybe someday I'll invite you to visit my office. Let you see what I actually built. Mom reached across the table and took my hand. We'd like that. Very much. It wasn't perfect. Years of damage couldn't heal over one dinner. But it was a start. And sometimes that's enough. 6 months later, Madison Tech Solutions announced a successful series of funding round of $8 million. 4 times her original investment. The press release credited strategic leadership and operational restructuring for the company's rapid growth. What it didn't mention was the hundreds of hours of work Madison and I had put in together, rebuilding both her company and our relationship. We still attended therapy every other week. Some sessions were harder than others. But we were trying. Mom and Dad came to my office for the first time in August. Dad cried when he saw my name on the building directory. Mom couldn't stop taking pictures of my corner office. I'm sorry, Dad said for the 100th time. I'm so sorry we didn't see you. You see me now, I replied. That's what matters. I never forgot what happened at Marquesi that night. But I chose not to let it define me. Because I'd already proven everything I needed to prove. to them and more importantly to myself.